my entire adult life, over 3 decades. You don't have to guess how old I am and offend me, but it's been a long time. And there was always this foundation, even in a profession where, humans are flawed. We make mistakes. But in a profession where so much is expected of us because we're given so much responsibility and authority, there has always been a foundation of trust and confidence in that what we do is critical for the success of our nation, that our families are safe, that we have this balance of freedom and order, and that we know that people's rights will be protected and people's families will be protected. And it really hasn't been until the last few years that I saw a considerable shift in that trust. And although I can attribute it to failures within law enforcement, mostly failures to just kind of own up to our shortcomings, at the end of the day, it's a very, very distinguished, respectful, committed, and professional institution. But when trust deteriorates, it doesn't matter how good a job you're doing, that lack of trust becomes contagious, and oftentimes it's perception, not reality. So I'm proud of what law enforcement does every day, and I never expected we would be responsible for so many different elements of our nation's needs as we are today. But my point is this: I think that democracy in this republic is very similar. For my entire adult life, when I've been cognizant of what exactly it means to be a good voter and be involved in electing people who are the leaders that are chosen in our community, I've always had trust and confidence in the process of voting. Not because it's perfect, not because it's run by anything other than humans who are flawed. Like I said, in law enforcement, there will be mistakes that are made along the way, but as an entity, I stand in front of you now telling you that both law enforcement and the process of democracy are sound and stable. And although many people try to deteriorate that by tearing at the reputation and the trust that we should have these institutions, I think it's undermining who we are as a nation. And I think that it's self-serving in many ways. And what do I see now as the sheriff of one of the biggest counties in the nation? I see that every day I'm dedicating a considerable amount of resources just to give people confidence that they can cast a vote safely, and that is absurd. It's absurd to think that any individual can't go to a vote box and drop their ballot, that you can't go to a polling site and not be harassed, that you can't cast your vote and at the conclusion see an election and have confidence that the outcomes are just. Because I know firsthand, and it's not my role or responsibility, but I know how hard the county recorder and his office work because I have seen it and I've been present during it. And I have news for you. The people who work in those offices and those polling sites out in the community are people from the community that represent all parties, all walks of life, and all interests, and there are checks and balances. So you wanted me to talk to you today about election security, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. But the more important issue is the security of our nation is dependent on the people in our nation, not the people who are elected or those that wear uniforms, because you are a much more robust force than we are. So we're going to fight and we're going to work and we're going to do everything necessary to keep people safe and to protect our community and the polling sites so that we can protect our democracy. But every day, folks should be looking in the mirror and asking yourselves how you're behaving out there. Because if your intentions are to focus on who you are and what you're doing and try to passively intimidate others trying to just cast a vote, then shame on you. Because they have as much right to get to that polling site and drop a ballot as you do. And if you believe that a certain tactic or appearance or behavior suddenly makes us a stronger, safer nation, I beg to differ. So please help law enforcement focus on the priorities. Stop draining our resources in places unnecessarily, because there are folks out there that need our help a heck of a lot more than watching you at a polling site because you're watching somebody else and filming them to intimidate them. And when I say intimidation, I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about a criminal offense, because people have rights and I respect those rights. You can be intimidating without committing a crime. You can make people uncomfortable without committing a crime. It doesn't make it okay just because it's not a crime. So I'll give you some stats and then I'll answer your questions. And my intent today is not to sensationalize. It's actually quite the opposite. It's just to call on people to be better people to each other. Since September 1st to present, we have received about 14 election-related tips. They've really been general in nature, nothing specific to a crime or a deep conspiracy that many are always seeking for. It's just really concerns. We have what are called threat liaison officers. They're specialists, they're experts in a lot of different areas, but they're the ones who gather intelligence and work on those things, and they've addressed those general concerns, and we've used those as intelligence as we kind of map out how we're going to deal with these issues. Right now, there are 2 public drop boxes, which I know you're well aware of because that's where we've seen the incidents of concern. And then there's about 16 more in secured areas, city halls, and places like that. I actually visited a few today just to get my eyes on them firsthand. The issues that have occurred are at the public sites because they have less physical stability and security around them. They're just out and open and make it convenient for folks. But that's where others have deemed it's an appropriate place to kind of target and act as though they're extension of, I don't know, some form of government to check on the vote to make sure folks are dropping 1 ballot versus 2. That started on October 12th. And I know a lot of this stuff is really with my colleague who's done an exceptional job, Recorder Richer. These are really at his lane, but I'll just kind of review those also. So since October 12th, there's been 2 public drop boxes, 16 secured sites, and now there's 12 vote centers where you can pick up a ballot and vote from there or drop your ballot off. We've had 2 suspicious activity criminal reports, meaning we wrote criminal reports and submitted those to the prosecutor's office since this has begun. We had 1 additional request actually from you folks that were asking just to get a perspective on if a certain area was safe for you, and yes, we want you to be safe too. That's been the long and the short of it. You've covered most of it. Aside from those things, really the public has been exceptional and cooperative and helpful. I don't know, how things are going to go forward. There's going to be more sites and more locations and more people getting engaged. And the more folks there are that are creating problems, the more deputies that you're going to see on the streets focused on this versus burglaries and crimes against children and robberies and all the stuff we should be doing. But we'll come in, we'll babysit polling sites because people have to misbehave if that's what we have to do to protect democracy. I will say this, I'm proud of this organization. We've dealt with a lot in the last few years and we've done it exceptionally. I say we, really, the men and women, not so much me. Even this morning, the FBI at one of our state meetings, because we meet on the regular with our federal, state, local law enforcement officials. And the FBI was kind enough to commend us, saying that we are a model across the nation right now in the manner that we are working with our partners and executing on this responsibility and trying to protect democracy. So I appreciate the compliment from the FBI, and take a few of your questions, and we'll go. But I will, if I could, there's a lot of you in the room. You can raise your hands, Jason. I'll go around. I'll get to you next. But do me a favor. Try not to dominate the room at the detriment to your colleagues. I know sometimes folks get on a run with me. Jason.
All right, Paul. You had said that intimidation isn't always a criminal offense. What can you do from a legal standpoint with your deputies if there are people outside there? What is allowed? What's not allowed? What can be done to prevent the intimidation, and when does it reach a point that it crosses the line to possibly criminal behavior?
Sure, and if you couldn't hear his question, he's just asking, when is intimidation or other behaviors that are occurring out there become criminal versus just disrespectful. If you are, and it's going to be hard for me to define it in a total package, but if we have folks that are out there that are saying things that are threatening in nature, meaning invoking or provoking violence or threatening violence, if they are trying to influence how you vote because they are doing something that threatens your well-being, if they're imposing their will that actually prevents you in some way from getting to cast your vote, then they're going to be into that criminal space. And here's what I have directed my employees. And I told you we have TLOs, but we also have uniformed deputies that will be responding to locations, and we have field force teams standing by if there's an escalation of violence. But if it's black and white, if we know unequivocally what you've done is criminal, then we will act on it. We will arrest you or cite you or handle it however is appropriate by law. If it falls into what I'll call the gray area, where it's questionable, but we're not so confident that you cross that threshold, then we will write a criminal report and we'll work directly with the county prosecutor's office as well as federal prosecutors in the FBI to determine if a state law was violated or a federal law or civil rights. If it falls into that third category of just it is, there's nothing to it, there's no meat on the bone, and it's just somebody out there who has the right to be present, and their presence, although awkward or their attire is something that makes you feel uncomfortable, we're going to just make sure that's a safe space and we're going to allow people to do what they're allowed to do. And unfortunately, Jason, I will be dedicating resources to stay put and stay present so that you know, for those who want to vote, that you can do so safely. And we will do that as long as the bandwidth doesn't stretch to the point where the band breaks. That answer it? I believe she was next. What's your name? Who are you with?
Hi, I'm Sasha Huffman with the Arizona Republic. I'm wondering, in terms of people photographing poll workers and election workers coming in and out of McTac, what's the legal line there? Obviously, it's a public sidewalk. You know, they are allowed to take photographs in public, but does that constitute harassing or threatening election workers from a criminal standpoint?
It's not criminal in nature because anyone in today's world, kind of like it goes back to that legislation, I guess, that was passed where they were trying to put limitations on video, taking video of law enforcement during the course of their duties. It's you know, you guys know the First Amendment as well as anybody. People have the freedom to do so as long as they're not impeding what you're trying to accomplish, as long as you're not saying things that are threatening in nature, so they can capture that. But I have spoken with the recorder's office about finding a way to just do a better job of giving comfort to those volunteers from the community, from all walks of life, as well as people who work in the recorder's office who represent all parties and walks of life, so they can come and go and do their job. And we will find ways to make sure that they feel comfortable and safe, knowing the possibility exists that somebody's going to pick up a phone and try to videotape you to make you feel uncomfortable. But as long as they don't impede you or threaten you in some way, and they do it from a public space, then they're allowed to do so. Ma'am?
Nicole Grigg with ABC 15. Thank you. So going back to kind of Jason's question, will you have deputies at these drop boxes 24/7 then to help people feel safe?
Well, as much as I would like to, Nicole, let me start there and do it the proper way. As much as I would like to tell you that I have, you know, a overflow of deputies to dedicate to those spaces, I do not. So what we have is we have a mixture of people that are going to be in plain clothes. We have some in uniform, and as I said, what we call field force. And we will mix and match them. And we will be present in as many places as we can without being a distraction. Because what I don't want is I don't want someone to show up at the polls and see a uniform just because, and suddenly you wonder now. It's like you go anywhere in public and you see a police officer or a deputy there, suddenly you are concerned for your safety because you don't know what's occurring. I want people to vote comfortably. Our presence can make you as uncomfortable as someone who's there with, you know, attire that makes you uncomfortable. So we're going to do our best to be present to promote safety, and when needed, be there in uniform. But I'm not going to sit here and mislead you to tell you that I have so many deputies that every spot is going to be covered by a deputy.
When you say polling, do you mean polling and a drop box?
I mean, anywhere you want to vote, that is, you know, that's going to be part of the process. Now, you know, I stand here alone right now, but I also stand, you know, just imagine virtually behind me are all the police chiefs from all the municipal agencies around the county and around the state. And they're our partners in this, and they're doing exceptional work also, as are their officers, so they'll participate in some capacity also. But this comes down, as I said, at the end of the day, you know what makes crime rates go down? You know what makes voting more comfortable and, you know, makes our families more safe? When we as people start behaving better and treating each other with respect. We can't be everywhere, and we can't be the guardians of behavior. So just be nice, people. Let people vote. It shouldn't be that hard. Don't tap my resources when they should be somewhere else, but we will do our best to be as present as we can. I know it doesn't give you a hard answer, but that's the true answer. Go ahead.
Sure, Penzone, Jordan Bonke, ABC 15. I think that.
Oh, you guys are trying to trick me or doubling down. You send too.
Same.
I'll let it slide this
Sure,
time.
we sit this close to the office too. So wanted to
A little
ask,
too much information, but go ahead.
on Friday,
Yeah.
we saw the reports of people in tactical gear with long guns.
Yeah.
In your definition, is that voter intimidation? And I also get the sense, Sheriff, that you don't necessarily want to have to respond to this type of stuff.
No, I mean, so my definition is irrelevant. It doesn't meet the threshold for a crime, and that presence in of itself does not. Okay, this is a free nation. The Second Amendment is as important as the First, so people have the right to bear arms, and unfortunately, the gear that they wear is by their choosing. So that in of itself does not constitute. Now, I will tell you that we're working very closely with the federal government and the DOJ, so that if they interpret those things are in some way a violation of civil rights or impeding the vote, then it's possible that they may take that on. But right now, in my conversations with the county attorney, it would take a little bit more than that to cross the threshold. And I'm assuming you have a follow-up to that, so fire away, and then I'm going to move on. Is that it? We're good?
Yeah.
All right. Who's next? In the back there, please.
Sheriff Nick Phillips from the Arizona Capital Times. I have,
Nick.
I think it's kind of a two-part question, but should be two quick parts. You said you filed 2 suspicious activity criminal reports. Are there identities of suspects associated with those reports?
I don't have them right in front of me, but I'm sure that our deputies, I would expect that our deputies, if they engage someone that was present, that they're going to identify that person and would have the lawful right to do so. If it's a situation where they were gone and once we arrived, I can follow it up with you, Nick, to get you the specifics, but I didn't review the reports yet. I just know what we have taken so far.
Okay, and second, can you just speak more generally to?
Pretty general so much. I'm surprised you're gonna give me more leash on that, but okay, sure.
But to the interactions that your deputies have had with the individuals at these ballot drop boxes, what have they been like?
My understanding is they've been very respectful and very thoughtful, but I will tell you what my directive has been to my employees, and not that they need to hear it from me because they know it already. Our job is to be consummate professionals focused on our duties and responsibilities. We're not out there to be relational with you, and I don't say that in a condescending way because I want this organization to be kind and thoughtful and interactive with the community. But what I don't want to see is oftentimes when you have, and it can come from any faction, so I don't think I'm pointing the finger at anyone. People like to try to bond with us until they want to crack us in the head with a flagpole. You know, people want to bond with us until suddenly they're out front protesting because of something that occurred. And the day that they need us, then they adore us. But the day that they're upset about something, then we'll become, we're demonized. I want my employees to be focused on the job and not get caught up in relational interactions in these spaces because they can turn south very quickly. So my expectation is that we will treat everyone with respect, and we ask the same of them. But we're not out there to bond and to hang out. We're out there to make sure that people are safe and that people can vote safely. I'll come back to you. Let me just make sure and check the rest of the room before I. Your name is, sir?
Graham Resnick, 12 News. What are you anticipating on November 8th? We know what happened here 2 years ago. The building was surrounded, there's now fencing. What are you preparing for that night as the election results come in?
Well, our job is to prepare for the circumstances that are going to be most challenging to deal with and hope that we've over-prepared and it's underwhelming. We don't want to be on the other side of that where we've under-prepared and it's overwhelming. But I think that, what I don't like to see, and that's why I kind of started off on my soapbox about trust and confidence and faith in institutions that are key to the success of our nation, like law enforcement and democracy within a republic. Just because you don't like the results doesn't mean that they were wrong. Just because you don't like the results, especially in that moment, let's be honest, it's unlikely that most elections will be decided on election day. If it's only if it was stolen because you didn't win, I don't know that any football game would ever be decided. So we have to get back to that space. So what am I going to do as a sheriff? I'm going to dedicate as many resources as necessary to keep people safe and to make sure that Arizona is a beacon across the nation as the example of how it should be done. But the truth is that falls on people, not on me, and how they behave. But we'll be prepared for it, and we'll invest in it, and we'll do our best.
Also, you talked about this being a diversion for your staff. How many people, sworn or otherwise, are you dedicating to the task of protecting our elections?
I keep getting asked that same question, and I give this tongue in cheek, but a lot. And the reason I say that is because if I don't want to give a specific number, Bram, and have people kind of try to estimate or calculate how they're going to strategize against us, because quite frankly, there are folks out there that see this as a competition of cat and mouse, and how do we circumvent law enforcement to get to undermine democracy. So just pretend like everywhere you go, there's somebody watching you, and you'll probably behave better. Ma'am?
Yeah, I was just gonna.
Oh, actually, I was pointing behind you, but I'll
Oh,
come up to
sorry.
you in just a second.
You're good. We're in bad
You go
spots
first.
here. Thank you.
You're not with 15 too, there's like a whole 15 faction here.
No, I'm
That's
here
right, you said
for-
earlier. No disrespect to 15, just want to make sure you're not
No,
stacking the deck.
Jason.
Listen, they're both there, so
Okay.
I gotta give them credit, they got two people to come. I'm wondering on election day plans specifically, I know Bram asked about election night, but for election day, I mean, there's more than 200 voting locations in the county. Obviously, you guys can't be everywhere, you're saying pretend as if there's always someone there, but we did see last run on primary day that there were some folks who did stuff similar to what these Dropbox watchers are doing, camped out in the parking lot, past the 75-foot line, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How are you guys preparing to kind of respond to those incidents, which, I don't wanna, I can't tell the future, but.
No, and I wish I had, in addition to the things I've already expressed, I wish I had more for you. I don't. It's all that we can do is value out what resources we can safely dedicate without neglecting the rest of the needs of the community. And then how do we tactically assign them to be as impactful as possible while working with our partners. Our job is to be proactive in the manner that we want to have a presence that reminds people to behave well. And if our presence doesn't do that for you and you choose to behave in a criminal manner, then we act accordingly and hold you accountable. So many of these things are, I mean, let's be honest, folks. Our world has been, off tilt for 3 years now. All the things, bless you, that we've seen we've never expected or could have prepared for. And although we've had a dry run last election that was kind of thrown on us where we weren't necessarily expecting it or ready for it, and we responded pretty darn good here. Now, we've prepared even more so, but so have those folks. And it's a small faction of those who want to do bad things. So I keep saying it, we're going to do our best. I wish I could tell you I'm going to make you this promise, and I guarantee you it's going to go smooth. But how smooth it goes is more about you than it is about me. Ma'am?
I was just gonna follow up, where on Saturday night things sort of escalated when someone tried to approach those armed individuals, tried to lift a flag on a car, got tackled to the ground, kind of borderline assault. No one was arrested, the armed individuals left, and so did the person who tried to confront them. Is that concerning, though, that now you have two different groups kind of outside these drop boxes?
Yeah, I don't want to acknowledge like how you expressed what occurred out there, if it's factual or not, because I don't know firsthand. I'm familiar with the incident, but I don't know all the details to it, so I don't want to give the impression like I'm agreeable to what you're expressing, how it occurred. But the report was taken, and I think your question really was, my concern that now there's opposing forces. And everything that we've dealt with in the last few years when it comes to any form of, we'll call that protest, there's always opposing forces, and we have to adapt to both. Sometimes people say, well, why don't you run, full steam ahead right to that threat right there and mitigate it? And it's like, well, because who's running up behind us as we're trying to do that? I wish people would just leave the investigations and the public safety to those of us who are professionals. And it's not that we don't appreciate your see something, say something. You want to work in law enforcement, I got applications for you, I promise. If you can meet the requirements, we'll hire you today. But if your intent is to go out there and take it into your own hands and make things more difficult for us by challenging, if we're focused on one group and you're challenging them, now we got two groups to deal with. And that just makes our job even more difficult. So if you believe in us, then believe that we know what the heck we're doing and trust in us to do it the right way. And trust in us to understand. And again, I'm working here. I just spoke with I told you I talked to the recorder on the regular. I talked to the county attorney on the regular. We want to make sure that if a law, any law, is broken. I know people want to kind of categorize, well, are we talking about, these incidents? Are we talking about election fraud? I'm talking about any law. If a law is broken, our job is to investigate it, determine if there are facts to establish a crime was committed, and then to pursue prosecution. I am not partial. I am not subjective. I am not partisan in that effort. Break the law, pay the price. My job is to make sure that we do the best job possible to investigate potential crime and then prosecute people for it. And that's what we will do on, every day to include election day. I'm gonna take maybe one or two more, and then you can hear my voice is going. Jason.
Your decisions to where you place your resources leading up to election day, election night, is it going to be on a case-by-case basis, a place where you know you've had problems before, a place where you receive a complaint? How is that going to be?
Yeah, so how do we dedicate resources? It is, it is demand and then supply, not the other way around. We will look at the areas we deem to be most vulnerable or most potentially under threat, and we'll allocate them accordingly and adjust accordingly. I guess that's it, buddy. All right, last one. Who's going to get it? Anybody that hasn't asked a question yet?
So the two suspicious activity reports, is that all you know, that there are two suspicious activity reports?
That's all the criminal reports we have, but like I said, same thing, Brian, I have somebody follow up with you just to make sure my guys dig it out and determine if there's any other reports specific to these incidents.
Has that been referred to MCAO?
They always are. When we write a criminal report, we'll send them over there and they can take a look through and determine if the crime is established, if there needs to be further information to determine if there's a crime, or if they just look it on the surface and say there's nothing there.
But these are not any of the incidents we've been discussing?
No, I believe those are the incidents you're talking about.
Oh, the two with the two men?
Correct. I believe so, but like I said, I'll get it confirmed for you. I got it, all my chiefs are in attendance today. They're making sure I don't say anything wrong.
No
So,
arrests, though?
No arrests thus far, no.
Are you looking for those armed individuals? Because I know that they left, so are you looking for them? Do you want to speak with them?
Well, if they're involved in a criminal incident and we have to interview everybody involved, so yeah, we absolutely, if they're out there and they want to reach out so we can interview them, or if not, we do what we do, which is track you down and come talk to you. All right, Stephen, or excuse me, County Recorder Richard, step up to the mic. Anything you'd like to add, or are you doing okay? He's hiding back there, but he's doing a heck of a job, and you have no idea how hard this guy works and his team. And I'm going to close it with that. You know, they care very deeply about doing it the right way to make sure that our elections and the outcomes are transparent and accurate. And they're good people, you know, so when you make assumptions and you think there aren't checks and balances from all walks of life to come to the conclusion, is it going to be 100% unequivocally perfect? Nothing in life is, and we all seek ways to try to get to that, whether it's in law enforcement or counting votes. But being part of the solution isn't standing guard with, you know, weaponry to make people feel uncomfortable. Why don't you volunteer your time and show humility and work with others who aren't like you and look a little bit different or think a little bit different, and make sure you're all counting the votes the right way, and then I guess it goes a lot better. Oh, that's it. He's got something for us.
As
All
long as
right,
you were saying
take the
nice things.
mic.
All right. So when I took this office, I didn't expect to be interacting with Paul Penzone as much as I have, but it's been a remarkably positive experience, and I will tell you that we've interacted 3 times today already, twice in person. He was at our office on Friday for an extended period of time. He has been there every single step, and this didn't just start for the November general election. This unfortunately goes back 2 years now, and so Paul Penzone has been a regular blessing in my life. And as I mentioned to the team from Fox, from Channel 3, Fox, yeah. Today, Paul's been like a big brother, and that goes for every single one of the people who has worked with our organization. We have asked people to follow the law. We have asked people to comply with election law. We have asked people to show respect. But the sheriff's office and the county attorney's office and the FBI and the DOJ have the same sort of legal parameters that are placed on any other department and administration. And we would expect them to act where it's appropriate to act. But when the law is not there, the last thing you would want to see is them acting without the dictates of the law demanding that they do so. And I believe that they have heeded that line properly. They have been there. When on Friday night, I texted Paul and I texted his chief deputy Russ, and can only imagine you were making some nice Italian dinner or something like that. No, cooking up a little storm or something like that. But we had people out there within short time. They have committed an impressive amount of resources to this operation. They are doing what they can to ensure that this process is smooth, that this process is safe, that this process is accessible, and we are very grateful. So that's all.
Bigger but younger brother. Thank you, everybody.